Georgia Virtue presents the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast. This is episode 245. This week we mourn the loss of a Georgia legislator. We have a judge in hot water, the abortion question again, and the packing school employee. I'm Dave Roberts. With me is the star of the show, writer, journalist, TV personality, dog mom, and owner of the GeorgiaVirtue.com, Jessica Szilagyi.
That's a little bit dramatic. I think your mom listens.
She knows I'm not the star of the show.
Oh, jeez.
I'm here just to throw questions to you so that you can dazzle people with your brilliance.
Uh-huh. Lucky me. Lucky everyone.
It is Thanksgiving week.
It is. Grocery stores are full of people and lacking in pretty much anything.
Yeah, and it's more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm tired of that story. It's been run into the damn dirt. Yes, we're all aware. We all go to the grocery store. We all know it's more expensive.
Well, also, it gets more expensive every year.
It does. It's one of those stories that you dust off when it meets whatever political end that you have going. I'm not saying inflation's not a problem.
Of course.
I'm kind of tired of hearing that it's going to cost you $15 more this year. Okay.
Right.
We're still going to get together. We're not going to sit around a table and carve up a can of Spam.
Yeah.
Because I know that's all privilege talk, right?
Probably. Probably, for sure.
And I told you off air, I have a 82 CJ7. That's just a toy Jeep. It's if I was a mechanic, it'd be a project Jeep. It's kind of it's lifted. It's cool to screw around in. I got it back from the mechanic for about an hour. Took it across the street to put some fuel in it, put some fuel stabilizer in it, and it stalled in the middle of a 4-lane. So I had it for an hour before I had to have a tow truck come pick it up and take it back to the mechanic and fix what's going on with it.
This would be a great time for that sad trombone noise effect you wanted.
Yeah. The Price is Right. Bum, 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 bum. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Again, first world problems. It's not like my primary vehicle is broken down. It's the toy that I have that broke down. It's not the end of the world. It's like complaining that I have to wash my boat.
Oh man.
Well, this is not an easy transition.
No, but
yeah, it's really hard to change gears on this one. But Speaker Ralston passed away last week.
He did, after an extended illness.
And of course, we don't know what it is. It's none of our business. If the family decides to release that information, that's up to them. Not any of our business. It was more shocking because obviously you and I aren't in the know with the Ralstons. He was certainly not a fan of ours.
Speak for yourself.
Okay, certainly not a fan of mine.
Yeah, no, he didn't care for me either, but that's okay.
Well, you kind of take that as a feather in your cap.
Yeah. I mean, well, it truly, like, I never even really, I met him one time at a Republican leadership thing, face to face. But other than that, like, all of our interaction was either strictly political, like, as, I don't know, or me working as a legislative aide or something. But my opposition to him is one of the few people at the state or local level that I never really knew anything about them personally, and all of the conflict was rooted in ideology.
Yeah, that's the thing. I ran into him almost literally. I guess someone told him who I am, and he kind of just scoffed and walked away. Either that, or he recognized that I wasn't important enough to talk to. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's a tragedy for his family. Look, the people in Blue Ridge loved him.
They did,
and I know people that live up there who brag about being friends with the speaker and stuff, and absolutely loved him up there. It's one of those things where there was no point in running against Ralston. He was much loved up there. Which we find in politics a lot when you take a poll of what do you think of Congress, you'll find they have a disapproval rating of like 60% or even higher because we view Congress. When you talk about your congressperson, people tend to love their congressperson because that's the person they know. And that's the person that shows up to the luncheons, and that's the person that they correspond with. That's the person that you write if you want to have a flag flown over the Capitol, that kind of stuff. They love that person. And I'm guilty of it too. On the state level, is Gullett is my state rep, and I like the hell out of Gullett. I mean, super good guy. Do I like the legislature as a whole? Probably not. But do I like my representation? Absolutely.
Sure.
So that kind of gets into the personal stuff, and neither you nor I knew Ralston outside of professional circles and political circles. So, but it's a tragedy for his family. It was shocking to everybody who wasn't in the know. I knew he had health challenges, and somebody was he 68? Mm-hmm. Somebody that age, health challenges could be anything. Could be needs a hip replacement. Could be anything. So it wasn't shocking to hear that somebody 68 was starting to wind down and say, I don't need this full-time job anymore. Of course, they're going to replace him with a 70-year-old.
Yeah, and I think that just the circumstances of it all in the public eye happening so quickly, I think, I'm sure that people close to him knew he was not well, and I'm sure that some political leaders knew that he was not well leading up to what happened. But, I'm sure that, like, as much as John Burns is going to be, like, it kind of puts a shadow over him becoming the speaker. Because
it does.
It's not a positive. I mean, it's not like a handing off the gavel. Even if Ralston had been able to hand it off because of health issues, that he was going to focus on himself. The fact that he obviously has died, it kind of, I don't know. It just changes the tone.
It really does, and I think it would have been helpful to have the outgoing speaker do a warm handoff. Mm. And anybody who's ever taken a job, a leadership job, and this is outside of politics, when you replace somebody who's retiring and you're able to get in there and work with that person for a couple of months, and they take you and introduce you to the clients and introduce you to the team that you'll be leading, it makes it so much easier than when that person just quits and you walk in cold and you have to go and introduce yourself and establish yourself. It's a warm handoff is so much easier in any professional setting. And then when you start adding the personalities at the Capitol and you start adding all the outside influences, the whether it's outside money that's coming in, whether it's the lobbyist, you add all that stress in there. So look, the incoming speaker is not coming in cold. I mean, he knows everybody. He's been there a minute. But if just for him, it would. And we're not glazing over the fact that a man is dead. It's just the practical things of carrying on with the business of the state.
Right.
Now, who's the speaker today?
Jan Jones.
And that makes her what?
Well, she was the pro tem, and so now she's the 74th speaker. And
the first female speaker in the state of Georgia.
Yeah, whatever.
I know you hate the firsts, and it'll be for like 50 days or whatever it is, but it is worth remarking that she is the first female speaker.
Congrats.
Yeah, for 50 days. She didn't want it anyway. She could have run. She could have thrown her name in the hat. She didn't want it.
Right.
Which I respect. I wouldn't want that job. Yeah. I don't think it's a hard job. I just don't want it.
Well, the job is what is truly one of those where it is like it can be what you want it to be. Of course, you need a speaker who is present and engaged and in good health and mobile and things like that. But and arguably, a speaker is more. It entails more days and time than a traditional lawmaker, but it is still a part-time gig if you so wish.
If you wish.
Right.
But you can work as much or as little as you want. Or as you feel you need to, I should say. I shouldn't say want. As little or as much as you feel you need to. Right. You could be on state business. I mean, you're the one who decides if you're on state business or not. So it's a not a bad paying gig, but you do have to re-up for it every 2 years.
And you asked about what's it called? His campaign account and what happens to it, because as of the last filing, he had $1,091,611 in his campaign account.
And
a lot of money.
If Georgia law parallels federal election law, that money, of course, stays in the campaign account. The campaign account is much like a corporation.
Yes, it's David Ralston for state representative is the account.
Right. Yeah, Dr. Cool outlives David Roberts. The corporation can live on. So that money's still there. So my question when I started doing research was, well, what happens to it? Well, the answer is not much. The treasurer, and whoever's listed on his form as treasurer, is still in charge of that money. And it can be doled out to charity. It can be refunded. It can be given to contributions to other politicians for other elections. So I think the latter is much more likely than giving people refunds. I mean, obviously, if you put $2,500, twice a year, every year into his account, you may say, "Hey, listen, I'd like to get that money back." That may happen, but that's going to make that treasurer, and I don't know who it is. Even if you told me the name, I wouldn't know him. That makes that treasurer a very powerful person in Georgia politics.
According to his paperwork, it is a man named or a woman, Cherie Bradburn.
My Sharia Moore, give me a call.
What's his wife's name?
I don't know.
I thought it was Cherie.
And it may be. It may be. And that, but again, she can't take that money and stick it in her pocket, but she becomes a huge player.
His wife is Cherie.
Yep. She just became a huge player. Not that she wasn't before in Georgia politics, because she can dole that money out to candidates as she sees fit. She can also.
Or she could run.
Or she could run. Or she could use that money the way that Ralston did, which is to take people you don't agree with politically and primary them and fund other candidates. So, again, moving past the human side of it, there is a political impact when we lose a figure as prominent and as well funded as David Ralston was. So
time to be alive.
It from a as we like to say, the 30,000 foot view to see how it shakes out will be interesting just from a political observer standpoint. Again, setting aside the human side of it, just to see what happens going forward with that stuff, and see what happens in the House going forward. Obviously, there'll be huge memorials and tributes the first days of session and all that. But when they get down to business, how the new speaker handles things, what changes in the House, if anything, unless Burns it could be come in as a cookie cutter. I don't know. We won't know until we see it.
Right.
So we have
for sure.
Yeah, we have a South Georgia judge charged with 58 counts of judicial misconduct.
Yes, this is down here in the judicial circuit adjacent to mine. Candler, Emanuel, people are familiar with like Metter, Swainsboro, all of that jazz. And this is Judge Robert Reeves. People know him as Bobby Reeves. And if you recall, the lawyer we talked about on the show from Screven County named Hubert Reeves, it is his brother.
Naturally.
Of course. But Judge Reeves has been on the bench since 2007, and there's been all this whisper about these charges and this investigation going on by the JQC. But it just was released, I think, on Wednesday. And I mean, I knew the rumblings of what it was, but I have never, ever seen 58 charges. I mean, I don't know. He's an older gentleman. I think he's almost 80. He's in his 80. I mean, he's getting up there. So, you know, it very well may be that they are doing this in excess to kind of force his hand and push him out. But it's important before we go forward he was just reelected for another 4-year term 2 weeks ago. I think he ran unopposed. He's run unopposed probably always, but at least in the recent history. So, and he just became the chief judge of the circuit in 2020 when another judge retired, and he was then the senior judge. So basically what it outlines is everything that he's done in the last 6 years, since 2015-16 to present day. And it's everything from claims of sexual harassment and bias and inappropriate comments about maternity leave and women dividing their duties between motherhood and being an attorney, to asking a black man who was exiting the courtroom after Judge Reeves had told people to stay seated. He said something to the effect of, like, "Are you really that stupid?" Making comments about inmates in the jail, like, do we actually have to feed these people? Lots of stuff that we can get into. But the biggest thing to me of all of it, and again, because I'm a terrible feminist, but the biggest, most problematic thing that was outlined in these allegations was the fact that he has spent 7 years promoting an advocacy center in our circuit, or in the circuit, that works with the prosecution. And that is strictly prohibited for judges to do that, to lend their office name to any private entity or cause. But went as far as to host, like, give-a-thons and Facebook Lives and things like that, and, you know, tell them that supporting and donating to this organization helps the prosecution of people who have molested and abused children. And while we all probably know that to be true, because we're talking about forensic interviews and forensic medical examinations and all of the resources that hurt people need when they become a victim of a crime, it's particularly concerning because it gives the impression that he thinks everything they do is perfect and without room for criticism, and he presides over molestation and child abuse cases. And I mean, he's pretty much tainted everyone's opinion of him. So I don't know where you want to start with this, but it's a lot of that.
One of the things that immediately comes to mind is, obviously, I want child molesters to be in prison. I mean, preferably dead.
Sure.
But you endanger every one of those convictions. Mm-hmm. When you do stuff like that. And as much as I want these people locked up and I want them away from society, I want them punished, but obviously, they're someone who would molest a child is a danger to society, and I want that person, you know, behind bars. But what's going to happen when some of these convictions start getting overturned, or they start getting new trials, and when you start talking about molestation cases, and someone has done 5 years of a 20-year sentence, and that 10-year-old is now 15, or that 15-year-old is now 20, you're going to re-victimize these children to pull them back in to testify again?
Well, and you know, to be perfectly honest, we all know that not every case is going to be reopened. I mean, there's some that are just, that's not the reality. But the fact that, well, first of all, he's still on the bench and still presiding over cases. And I know there are some attorneys who have begun filing recusals because of his support of this organization. But it's not, well, it's not an attack on the organization. I think it does speak to their ethical compass slightly, because they know who can fundraise for them and who cannot, and they know what their job is, and of course it's important. But if you're testifying on behalf of the state, I just.
And look, there's a good attorney is able to put the hat on and take it off. And this is true. And I'm not saying every one of the convictions will be overturned. I'm saying it opens the door.
Mm-hmm.
That he endangered those convictions. And even if one person gets to walk away with a conviction being overturned, that's too many. Because over his actions, not people get convictions overturned all the time, but
because it was preventable. Actions. Because
right.
It was unnecessary, and truthfully, what is your? Of course, I'm sure he does support the organization. I'm sure he thinks it's a great thing, but is the organization that important? Because a judge's ultimate purpose is to ensure that rights are upheld and to facilitate the seeking of justice. And when you think of it in those simple terms, I don't think there's anything more important.
Yeah, when I talk about putting the hat on and off, I'm talking about you'll see a defense attorney and a prosecutor out at lunch together, and they'll go at it in the courtroom, but they're able to take that lawyer hat off and go be a person. A judge can do the same thing, but legally, he shouldn't be lending his name, his professional name, to this. Now, look, if he really shouldn't even be donating, but
he's not allowed to donate. That's not.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. He shouldn't be donating, but he shouldn't be lending his professional name. He shouldn't be using judge or Superior Court judge in fundraising for anybody.
And it's also in your circuit. Like, it'd be one thing if it was, it would still be wrong, because you could be appointed to serve as an administrative judge somewhere else because of a conflict or whatever. Like, those types of things happen all the time. But in the organization specifically serves the 5 counties that you preside over.
Right. And this is one of those things where when you say the organization knows better, when a judge tells you it's okay, you tend to believe them.
I don't.
I know. I'm talking about most people. You tend to believe.
And
them.
If you run a 501c3 that is receiving state money and federal funds, I'm sorry, they know better.
They should. They should know better. Look, he knew better too, but I think he got too comfortable. That he's boss hog. I'm the big judge around here. I'm the boss. If I say it's okay, it's okay. And I'm sure he felt he was doing the right thing. But that's the problem. But of course, I don't think he went in there to say, like, gosh, I'm going to really stick it to the defense by fundraising for this entity that helps prosecute. I think he genuinely supports the cause. And so do I. If they're doing the testing, if they're doing the interviews, if they're helping victims, absolutely. Ultimately that's a good thing. But when you start getting, it starts getting very convoluted when you walk in as a defendant. And look, you and I were talking before that there are a lot of erroneous charges not necessarily molestation, but when it comes to sexual assault. There are a lot of accusations that we found out down in Statesboro that after 2 years we find out had no merit at all. But when you're walking into that courtroom and you just are supposed to be blind holding scales, and you realize that there's a thumb on the prosecutor's scale because the judge is already raising money for the advocacy group that's supporting the victim, So you've got the judge and the prosecutor against you and your attorney. That's
Think
a
about what
problem.
a horrifying feeling that would be as a defendant. And I mean, guilty or not, because that's what's so disgusting, and that's what makes me so mad when I write about the justice system and people are like, well, if they're guilty, I don't really care. Well, you should care, because if you don't give them the right process and the right procedure, you are personally and you advocate and you say that's okay because I don't like what they're charged with, or I don't like what they allegedly did, or whatever. You are to blame when that person gets let out or gets let off, because even the most guilty people are entitled to the correct and just process.
It's where your values are. If there's a reason we have the judicial process we have, and that is that you are presumed innocent for a very good reason. And we find, the more and more that media and news gets into these small counties and no small parts people like you, that we find out things like someone accused of rape by regret spends 2 years in prison, loses, kicked out of school, loses everything he has. Parents lose a bunch of money only to find out that not guilty. And we see these things over and over again. And an accusation is not a conviction. You can get accused of anything. You can get arrested for anything.
It's very easy to get arrested for these things too. And I just can't fathom somebody having to go through the process of felony charges because it's superior court, or even dealing with a divorce or something. I mean, or probate or whatever a probate matter. I can't imagine having to and knowing that the judge has done things that aren't on the up and up. It's just like that would be it's a horrifying process enough, and terrifying process. And
yeah, absolutely. And a layman going into court, you're already scared.
Sure.
Yeah, they're throwing around Latin and they're throwing around terms that you don't understand. And there's a lot of, you're sitting there behind a desk and you're depending on an attorney. And for a lot of people, a court appointed attorney, and you're sitting there and the judge, your lawyer and the prosecutor are just talking back and forth, and you have no idea what's going on until someone goes over and says, "Hey, Mr. Smith, do you understand what we're saying?" No, okay, let me explain it to you. This is what we're saying, and it's a scary process.
Yeah. And
then you throw in, what if English is not your first language?
Sure.
You have no idea what's going on. You're struggling to understand what's happening because people are talking fast, and then they start throwing in Latin, and you don't know what's going on, and then you find out that the judge is in cahoots with the people that are supporting the alleged victim, or the accuser in this case. So, it's a
mess, and so the next step is for the the director of the JQC brings the charges, and then after that, there is a hearing where they can obviously have an attorney and do all that fun stuff where they, defend their actions. All that is closed to the public, of course, but then there'll be a recommendation by the JQC, and of course, if there is any type of discipline or revocation or suspension or anything like that, usually that's appealed and then it goes to the Supreme Court and then a decision is determined. So, I mean, it's still a good ways away from any type of resolution. And I think on the website for the JQC it was actually listed on 2023 matters, which means that it won't be taken up by that committee until, early in the year, which is only a problem for the fact that he's still sitting on the bench. If these things are in fact true. And not, some of the, I mean, like the stuff about the conflict, like that's on video. Those are on videos that are still circulating the internet. So, I mean, we know those things happened. As far as the sexual harassment and the comments, of course, there's court reporters, but I haven't personally seen the evidence for that. But he's still on the bench. So,
well, some of the comments and stuff you chalk up to being an old man. And I don't know. I don't know about the sexual harassment. You would think that sort of stuff would stand on its own. But I also know, as you know, with a woman working in an office like that, i.e., Dick Donovan, you better if you're going to come at him, you better come out with a bunch of evidence. Even with the bunch of evidence we had against Dick Donovan, it still took a year. Mm-hmm. Thanks, COVID.
It's funny that you say that, though, because when the rumors of this started coming out, of course, like these started because of complaints. Excuse me. And the argument that was made to me by someone was, I sure hope they have all their ducks in a row, because if you're going to swing at the king, you better make sure it's enough to take him out. And that's so true, because, I mean, like, it's similar to my friend who lives in the Brunswick Judicial Circuit and was one of the ones that was raising holy hell about Jackie Johnson. I mean, she had to practice in federal court and take different types of cases in different places while she was. That's a reality for people in the legal system. There's only so much room where you can go. And of course, she still had cases in her area, but, you know, it was just a different environment. And so if you're going to go after a judge, you better be darn sure.
I said the same thing going back to our first story about Ralston. There was a movement a couple years ago to remove him as speaker. And I said, if you're going to attempt a coup, you better be successful. You know, it's the political equivalent of the revolution. Had the revolution failed, every one of what we consider our founding fathers would have been hung. If you're going to go against the king, you better win. Right. So with this, it was obviously they compiled a bunch of evidence. Now he could make this go away by turning in his card, stepping down from the bench, and giving up his bar certification, and go and retire.
He's vested and he doesn't have much. You know, there's not much he stands to lose. Although I don't
pride.
Right, an ego, but that always seems to get people. I don't know. I don't know. I'm sure the judicial retirement cannot be impacted by even a revocation. I'm sure that they've protected judges in the law.
It would need to be a conviction.
Right.
Now he can be impeached. I don't know how much. Yes. By the legislature.
Yeah, they're not going to do that.
They didn't do it to Donovan. They're not going to do it to him.
Right.
But there actually was a movement to start moving towards impeachment of Donovan. But again, COVID happened. Mm-hmm. So Donovan's a bad example just because of the timing. But he can be impeached. Without formal charges, the governor can't remove him. He's a duly elected officer.
He can suspend him, though.
He can what?
Suspend him.
Yes, he can, with pay.
Sure.
But the best thing to make all this go away is retire. Walk away. Let Kemp appoint somebody to take your place, and go make your inappropriate comments. Go raise money for whoever you want to raise money for.
Well, the other thing, too, is that this is South Georgia, so... Like, if he wanted to go away quietly, if he wanted to resign and step down and move on to something else and do it quietly, it would be very easy because people are so polite about that stuff down here. Like, I don't even think the local newspapers or anybody locally have reported on it other than myself. I mean, obviously, like, the AJC and some legal publications have. But, like, if he wanted to just duck and run and then move on, he could, and people would not.
You know, and we harp on the age a little bit because you said he's 80, and 80, especially in the legal profession, is not old.
No,
it's not like he's digging ditches. He's not running a combine or anything like that. But he still has a at 80 and in good health, and his picture on there, he looks like he's pulling off 80 pretty well.
I mean, I think he's completely of a sound mind, and I mean, I think he's.
Yeah, we're not talking Joe Biden 80.
Yeah, and even from he made some inappropriate comments, and it sounds like there was references to him like touching a woman's shoulder or rubbing her shoulders or, things like that. But as much as that is not welcome in the workplace, especially in the era that we're living in, I also don't think that he's a predator. I mean, there's a difference. I mean, it doesn't make it okay, and I feel badly for the women who were embarrassed by his behavior or felt any. I do. I mean, if those things are true, then I feel sorry for them, because it is uncomfortable. Most women have been in a situation like that, so you can relate. But
every woman who's ever met me.
Yeah, I haven't met you, but it's much different than a predator or somebody who is locking a woman in a room, or like blocking her from leaving, or it's a lot different.
Yeah, and look, intent has a lot to do with it.
Sure.
Intent has a lot to do with it. Sometimes you chalk things up to, he didn't mean anything by it. It just, in fact, if someone told him, "Hey, Judge, would you not do that? You made me feel uncomfortable," he would probably feel horrible. That's not what I meant. I'm sorry. I feel horrible.
Well, you would hope, right?
Yes, I would hope. I would anyway. If I made somebody feel uncomfortable, I'd feel horrible. It's never my intent, other than make you feel uncomfortable for having to talk to me every week.
Yeah.
This is a good time to remind you that these are our opinions and not those of anyone not on the show or any respective company for which we may work, own, or otherwise associate ourselves with on a regular or irregular basis. Also, you can find other episodes and relevant stories over the GeorgiaVirtue.com. The Mule of the Week. I nominated Kari Lake, Republican candidate for governor of Arizona.
Tell us about it, Dave.
She wants a do-over. Because there were, I think, 70 machines in Maricopa County that were malfunctioning on Election Day. Kari Lake is a Trump-supported candidate. Trump-supported candidates did not do all that well this election cycle.
They didn't.
She wants a do-over. The problem, and look, I understand if there's something wrong with the machines, they need to go do a hand count, whatever. Do-over, I don't think you're going to get a do-over.
Do we want to live in a world where you can?
Yeah, like kids playing football out in the street. Like, no, do-over. I didn't mean to do that. There's no such thing as a do-over. You can't. You're going to find the people that voted on those 70 machines and have those people come. There's no way you can track that. And being a student of history, without looking it up, I can't recall a single time in American history where we've done that. And the problem coming from her is that she was already screaming the same thing about the 2020 election. Now, I truly believe there's funny business that goes on in every election. I truly believe that there was funny business that went on in 2020 with finding ballots and trunks of cars and things like that. But, not so much that I say, don't seat the new president. And that's where Kari Lake was. So the fact that this is if this was the first time she said something like that, like this is a real problem, we need to investigate it. If she was an adult about it and say, let's do a hand count, because I believe it was the ink in the machines wasn't printing dark enough for the scanners to pick it up. Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll do a hand count of those 70 machines and see where we are. Fine, I think that's fair. And the fact that it's Maricopa County, which is, I believe, the largest county in Arizona, it's also, I believe, heavily Republican. I believe Maricopa is where Sheriff Opaio was too.
That sounds right to me.
Yeah, and he was a favorite of Fox News. I believe he's passed now. So yeah, the whole do-over thing is what makes her the Mule of the Week.
Dun, dun,
All right,
dun.
Jess. Judge strikes down Georgia's abortion law for all the reasons that you opposed in 2019.
I was right. I did not like. I was adamantly opposed to passing a bill based an if-then bill. I cannot stand those. If we change this, then we do that. We've done it with healthcare. We do it all the time. And it's not final, of course, because the state is appealing to this Georgia Supreme Court. But I am so glad that a judge said it's not valid because you passed it under these circumstances, but those were not the circumstances at the time.
Well, Fulton County Superior Court Judge Robert McBurney ruled last Tuesday that the state's abortion law ban was invalid. The fact that it's a county Superior Court judge, if I were advising a provider, I wouldn't tell them to jump in quite yet to start providing these services.
But they did.
I understand.
Literally on Wednesday, they were providing abortions up to 13 weeks. Some of these providers said that their phones were ringing off the hook. I'm not sure if I believe that.
I have a hard time believing that one, other than maybe people calling to see. No, I believe it was ringing off the hook with people calling to see, is it true? Is it true? Is it true? Not get my appointment
Right.
before it gets a chance to go to the Supreme Court.
Right.
I'm uneasy with the Superior Court judge making that ruling. That really needs to go higher.
Well, it has to start there, though.
I know it has to start there, but it's going to have to go higher. That's what I'm saying. I'm uneasy about is if I were advising the provider, be like, look, this is a county Superior Court judge that's making the call on a state law. Step carefully. I don't know. The fact is that the only reason Roe v. Wade got overturned is because a state passed a law that had to go up to the Supreme Court. So by this judge's reasoning, you couldn't pass a law, then have it go to the Supreme Court, and then you'd have to pass it again. This law was passed at the same time with several other states. It just happened to be another state's law went up to the Supreme Court first to be ruled, or that's the one that the Supreme Court chose to hear for overturning Roe v. Wade. So I don't know that this ruling is going to stand. It just again as a legal layman, but I don't know that this is going to stand because that's the way you challenge things at the Supreme Court is you pass a law and then you take it to the Supreme Court to figure out if it passes muster or not.
But in what universe is it legitimate to pass a bill?
No, I'm with you on the if then. I'm with you on
and
if
that
then.
is the reason he struck it down. There were like 4 challenges, and he didn't address any of them other than the if then.
The if then. Yeah, the if then.
He didn't even in his opinion, there was nothing about the other because I don't think. Because the law when it was passed and signed into law, it could not take effect for even aside from all the adjudication or the injunctions and things that we saw in the court battles. It even if none of those had happened, it could not take effect because of the superseding.
Right.
So you can't.
Who hates this ruling, right?
Who?
Stacey Abrams.
Why?
Had it come out 3 weeks earlier, some of her stuff because the only thing she had was abortion. Had this come out earlier, that would have been political fodder for her. Now I'm not sure it would have made up the 10 points. But it certainly would have made a game of it.
Yeah.
So the timing of this ruling is fortunate for Kemp and certainly unfortunate for Abrams on that because and every house race that was running on this. that was running on abortion rights. Those races are settled. I think the only runoff we have in the state right now is Senate, and that doesn't even damn apply.
Yeah.
Not that they won't conflate the two. Trust me, Warnock will be out there saying something, because even though he has no say in what the state does in the Senate, and Walker's will both key in on this about having to about this ruling, and that neither one of them have any say in the Senate over what the state does with its laws.
Yeah, I don't know. I just really, in this instance, it's not that big of a deal because you're talking about the same administration. And, well, from the standpoint of it being Kemp, but like we're still in his first term. So if he didn't win, if he didn't, they could just call a special session now and pass the bill again before the change in leadership, which he could.
And I'm not saying they wouldn't do that. I'm saying for political fodder.
Well, I understand, but what I was getting at is that, I mean, they're lucky because in this instance, it's something people remember because it was only 3 years ago. If you do these if-then laws and you're talking about something that took effect 20 years ago because you want to see like if it gets, overturned at a higher ruling that will permit it to take effect, I mean, how are people supposed to keep up with that? And is that good governance? Like, you're elected to deal with issues in the now. And the fact that, like I said, this happens all the time. There was one last session. I can't remember what it was about. It's escaping me now. But, I mean, it's not uncommon for our state lawmakers to say, and I feel like this judge, I mean, he has to have some legal basis somewhere, you would hope, for saying this. I mean, it's not an unreasonable position to take and say the law was void when it took effect, so that doesn't make it in effect now. If it was when you signed it into law, if it could not legally take effect, it is not valid today.
Well, and that makes sense. Now, why do they pass if-then laws? Because 3 years ago they're going into an election cycle, and they could point to this law. You were opposed to the law for a number of reasons. One was the pure expense the state would go through defending it.
Here we are.
Yeah, here we are. The pure expense of defending the law, and that made sense. And I even said at the time is why not let Alabama, who's passing a more restrictive law, let them spend their taxpayers' money going to the Supreme Court with it, and then once that's figured out, then we can pass our own law and let them spend the money. And it's not being opposed to the heartbeat bill or anything else. It's procedure.
It's the procedure and the proper role of government, because it is not our lawmakers' responsibility to plan for things. I mean, financially, yes, you should plan for the future. Legislatively, you should not. And honestly, you're trying to overshadow the judiciary, which is who makes these decisions. But
I don't know if it overshadows the judiciary or not. It's more the fact that they knew what they were doing was going to get immediately blocked, and it was. They knew it, and they knew immediately it was going to take a legal team and millions of tax dollars to go in to defend this, when we had 5 other states doing the same thing, and we could hang back and let them figure it out. But there's this urgency when you're in an election year, again, 3 years ago, if you're in an election year, to get this done, so that you can go back to your district and say, look what I did. But
the reason I said that it overshadowed the judiciary is because that's what he basically said that in his opinion. He said, if the judicial branch has declared a constitutional right, and we're not talking about the dumbass right to abortion. That's not what it is. It's because the Roe v. Wade was about privacy. However you feel about abortion is irrelevant to the fact that it's not a constitutional right to abortion. It was about privacy. So he was talking about if the judicial branch has declared that there is a right to privacy, legislatures exceed their authority, improperly expand their role, and fundamentally alter the balance struck by the separation of powers when they enact laws they know to be plainly and facially unconstitutional. Those laws are void upon passage. I mean,
well, he's not
sounds
dumb.
pretty correct to me.
Yeah, he's not dumb. It just means that they're going to dust the law off in January.
And
Yeah,
well,
I don't know. Are they going to? Are they going to fight it out? Or are they going to just pass it again?
So in 2019, the reason it was brought up in 2019 is so that, in my opinion, Republicans who maybe, well, not necessarily in the House, but like on the state level, would have 3 years to recover before another statewide election. I think they adequately and sufficiently accomplished that because no one saw COVID coming, and that, I think, changed a lot of things for a lot of different reasons. But I think that they did it early on in and that was one of the first things that Kemp tackled for this very reason. And I think that he's going to be queued up to do that exact same thing if he wants to encourage them through his floor leaders, which are another thing that is exceeding its authority. If he wants to push that from the governor's office, I think that they would be glad to take it up again, especially with everything going on. And you might think, oh, that's a waste of time. No, it's not, because when when a kid does something wrong, we say, no, go back and do it the right way. And I think that's important that we do that here.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem doing that. Is take the same wording, take the if then out, because now we have the ruling, dust it off, run it right back to the floor. Don't even need to run it through a committee. Run it right back to the floor, vote up or down, send it to the Senate, vote up and down, and send it to the governor. And that could be done in the first 2 days of session.
But it won't.
Nothing happens until crossover day.
But before
and then it's 2:00 in the morning.
And I know we have to move on to the next topic before the show ends, but just for the record, on February 28th, 2019, on Facebook, I said that I was disappointed with Republicans because of their conditional legislation and that it was not the proper rule of government, and I thought that they were setting themselves up for even more legal battles than the bill on its face would have. So,
don't dislocate your shoulder patting yourself on the back.
I won't. I used both arms, so,
So, we got the strapped staff member. A staff member at a primary school in Georgia was arrested and fired after she left her purse containing a firearm in the school bathroom.
How do you feel about this?
She's an idiot.
Well, of course, I agree with that. It's a very...
No, I'm talking about just leaving your purse.
Right. Overnight, too.
How do you get in your car? I mean, how do you get in your car not knowing where your purse is? I mean, I don't carry a purse, but if you carry one every day, and actually if you work in a school, you usually put your purse in a cubby or whatever. It's not the first time I've heard of something like this. There was a teacher out here that got fired for being under the influence, and turned out she had a pistol in her purse. And all that. First of all, I don't like women carrying pistols in their purses.
Because if they leave it somewhere, then someone can take it.
No, because it's too hard to get to if you need it fast.
I understand. I just mean, I totally agree. It's not practical.
Yeah, but you know, a pistol in your purse is better than one in your car. It happens. We know it happens at the airport. You simply forget. And again, I know where my guns are all the time, but you simply forget that you had one in your backpack, or you went to the range or whatever, and you forget that you had a pistol in your backpack. Or you had ammunition that was loose in your backpack, and you tried to go through security. We know it happens. Mm-hmm. We know it happens at Hartsfield every day. And usually it's not a big deal. They send you away. I would be interested to know if this is what she does every day, is carry a pistol in her purse. Was this a case that's not an excuse? This doesn't make it right. It's a case where she had to drop her car off at the mechanic and didn't want to leave her pistol in there, ended up throwing it in her purse, and didn't drop it off at home before going to work. Was this a one-off and something like that? I also want to know, I guess they opened her purse to get her wallet to see whose it was.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't go into Connie's purse. If she wants me to get something out of her purse, I just hand her the whole damn thing.
Well, I'm sure, yeah, I feel like you probably accurately, I'm sure they said someone found it the next morning or whatever. And I guess, so, the whole argument that responsible gun owners don't leave things unattended and all these things, like, I don't know if she had other bags. Like, there have been times, I mean, I've left the house before without my purse because I have had a work bag or 2 work bags or a work bag and a camera bag or something, and I left my purse behind on accident. Those types of things happen. I do think the argument can be made that responsible gun owners like would not leave. I think accidents happen and people make mistakes. So I guess when we're looking at the law and charging someone, I think that you absolutely should look at whether or not, like, you could say, well, God, can you imagine if a kid found it? Well, a kid didn't find it. So what happened was that someone left their purse in the bathroom of a school with a gun in it, and an adult found it, and nothing bad happened. So what should the consequence be? I mean,
first of all, getting fired is a pretty good consequence.
Sure, but is being charged with a felony?
I think that one's tough. I think that's really, again, this goes to why. Mm-hmm. Not again, there's no excuse for it, but why? What happened that day that led to you bringing a gun on school grounds? Was it the scenario that I described where she had to drop her car off and ended up taking an Uber to work and so I'll just leave it in my purse and take it home and put it back in my car tomorrow when I pick it up? It's just a case where this is what she does every day.
Right. And I'm with you. And I'm sure a judge will, or when they're working out the process, because these things usually, I have seen that they don't normally go to trial. They usually are pleas. Even if they don't plead down the charge, they at least get like a probated sentence or something. I mean, thankfully, most non-felon, non-nefarious intentioned people are going to prison for this, which I agree with. I just, I really hope that in Oconee County, they look at the totality of the circumstances and the big picture. And I hope they don't, like, I can't stand when they get in a courtroom and they say, well, this could have been so much worse. Okay, I hear you, but it wasn't. And throwing the book at this woman is not going to prevent a mass shooting. It's not going to prevent the next person from sneaking a gun on, like, it's just not. I mean.
Well, you're right. It serves no purpose to the public to take her and lock her away. It serves no purpose to the public to even hit her with a felony. She lost her job. I mean, there's no reason to take her away from her family and lock her away.
And I don't want to pay for somebody to be in prison. I don't want to pay for them to live for that offense either. Like, that does not, I don't think that suits anybody. It's not a good use of my money. It's not a good use of your money.
But again, it goes to, if this is something that she was doing every day, well, yeah, that's somebody, she knew the law and she purposely violated it. If this was a situation where she just didn't know what else, I've got to be at work and my car broke down, I don't know what else to do. That I'd be a little more understanding with that. The situation is everything, and we don't know it at this point.
Mm-hmm. But they're sure raking her over the coals. I mean, people are like, "What a freaking idiot! I can't believe this." Blah 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 blah. Just,
I won't say she's an idiot. It's stupid. It was an error in judgment. But she ended up losing her job anyway. But I can't be late for work, and I don't have time to go to the house and drop this off, or I don't know if she's married or whatever, have her husband swing by so she could drop it in his car. I don't know. Yeah. We don't know enough to go and start making judgments on her. I know that's a unusually metered response from me.
Mm-hmm.
So Jessica, closing thought?
Happy Thanksgiving. Make sure you use all the fine china. so that you have to hand wash it and just make the cleanup even more miserable.
My sister-in-law does that. She breaks out the fine china. I'm a chinette kind of person.
Yeah.
Last week, Robert Clary died, which also known as Robert Clary. He played Corporal Louis LeBeau on Hogan's Heroes. He was 95. He was the last of the original cast. He's an interesting guy. He was a Holocaust survivor. His parents and his siblings all died. He wore the tattoo on his arm. Obviously, tattoos don't go away for his entire life. Oddly enough, a lot of the stars on Hogan's Heroes, when it came out, it was controversial. The idea of making, Nazis funny, but Werner Klemper, who played the Nazi colonel, was a European Jew who served in the U.S. military after escaping Europe. John Banner, who played Sergeant Schultz, same thing. Many of them, Klemper took the job with the understanding with the producers that the Nazis would never win. They were always lampooned. But Clary had a very interesting story, a very interesting life. Never bore any ill will towards anybody. And if anybody could be bitter, it'd be somebody who survived the Holocaust. Mm-hmm. But he was a very, from all accounts, sweet man. Very talented, triple threat, sing, dancing, acting. But I know I'm old, and I watched TV shows from before I was born. But it was, I won't say sad. It was nice to see they had a nice long life, 95 years old. But it was worth remarking the passing of Robert Clary. So, on that note, happy Thanksgiving from all of us at Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong. Thank you for Eric Cumby, our editor. We are thankful for you. I'm thankful for you, Jessica. We will talk to you next week.
Hope they won't shoot me down soon. Days been gone, a sleepless night. Try to catch me howling at the moon. When it rains, it pours. Water's up to my chin.